Ayubowan, Vanakkam. I'm Vioni Dimel. This is Boston Lanka News, bringing you news, views, and entertainment from Boston and USA. President Rajapaksa tells the UN Secretary General, "Your plan to appoint a panel to investigate war crimes, totally uncalled for and unwarranted." Husband charged for the death of 6-month-old baby in Massachusetts. Baby's mother Dilrukshi was in church when baby died. Gotabia opens the door for UN investigation, according to Professor Francis Boyle. Center for Buddhist Studies in Massachusetts. Peaceful and contemplative setting for the study and investigation of Lord Buddha's teachings. President Mahinda Rajapaksa has rejected a United Nations plan to appoint a panel of experts to look into allegations of human rights abuses in the nation's civil war, President's office said in a statement. In New York, Mr. Ban Ki-moon's spokesman confirmed that the Secretary General had told President Rajapaksa that he intended to form a panel to advise him on the way forward on accountability issues related to Sri Lanka. Boston Lanka asked Kanishka Balasurya to share his views on UN Secretary General's plan and the Sri Lankan government's response.
As the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon approaches the halfway point of his first term in office, he is facing a major crisis. He has become the subject of heavy criticism for doing very little with regard to several key issues, ranging from climate change to Darfur to the Middle East crisis. After butting heads with his more activist predecessor Kofi Annan, who called the war in Iraq illegal, the last US administration intentionally wanted a weak and indecisive UN Secretary General who would simply be a pushover. But now, with a change in the US administration and with his reappointment on the line, this do-nothing quality of his has started to cause him problems. But the vested interest of major powers also prevent the Secretary General taking up any outstanding issue for action. For instance, he cannot take action in Darfur or regarding climate change without angering China. Similarly, he cannot really take tough action against Israel without stepping on US's toes. So this leaves him with little choice but to take action against a small country like Sri Lanka. This will be relatively less dangerous for his career ambitions and most of all, win the support of countries like Norway, who have been particularly vocal in their criticism. In a recently leaked memo, the deputy Norwegian ambassador to the UN, Mona Juul, calls Ban Ki-moon a spineless and charmless Secretary General, pointedly referring to his inaction in Sri Lanka. So in appointing this panel and in trying to look busy about Sri Lanka, one can argue that the Secretary General is simply trying to secure his second term in office.
Thank you, Mr. Balasurya. Jeffrey Wilson from Malden, Massachusetts, was arrested and charged last Sunday in connection with the death of his 6-month-old son, Nathan. Dilrukshi Vijay Singh, a wife of Jeffrey, mother of Nathan, was in church at the time of their baby's death. According to state prosecutors, the baby had died after suffering injuries consistent with shaken baby syndrome. Prosecutors said the baby's mother, Dilrukshi, returned home from church to find the baby unresponsive and tried to call 911 at least 3 times, but her husband insisted on driving the baby 10 miles into Boston to Children's Hospital. Prosecutors said the baby was shaken so hard there was no chance he would survive. To find out more about this shaken baby syndrome, Boston Lanka spoke to Dr. Darshini Kumarasena, pediatrician practicing in Wellesley, Massachusetts.
Shaken baby syndrome is where a young child or an infant has sustained various degrees of brain damage due to some intentional trauma, usually by a caregiver.
What are the symptoms of the shaken baby syndrome?
The symptoms of this shaken baby syndrome can be pretty nebulous and very difficult to detect because this is a problem that has been going on for a little bit of time in that baby's life. It's not something that occurs as a one-time incident. Usually these incidents have been going on in that little baby's life for a period of time, finally culminating in a fatal incident. So the early symptoms can be something like vomiting, lethargy, irritability, poor feeding, which can be due to a stomach bug or teething. So parents can put it down as one of those conditions. And very often, even if you take the baby to a doctor, it can be easily missed. We as parents as well as physicians have to have a high index of suspicion in all babies that are pretty cranky, irritable, feeding poorly, or having repeated episodes of vomiting, because it can be easily misdiagnosed.
Thank you, Dr. Kumarasena. According to Professor Francis Boyle, an expert in international law at the University of Illinois, Sri Lankan Defense Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa's recent interview to the BBC has opened doors for UN investigations of Sri Lanka war crimes. Mr. Rajapaksa said in the interview that he would not allow any war crimes investigation in Sri Lanka. According to Professor Boyle, a sovereign state must first be given the opportunity to investigate and prosecute war crimes committed by its own armed forces. Only if the sovereign state fails or refuses to do so can international bodies step in to conduct those investigations and prosecutions, such as the International Criminal Court. Boston Lanka asked Kalana Senaratne, how can the Sri Lankan leaders be brought before an international war crimes tribunal when Sri Lanka is not a signatory to the Rome Statute? Kalana Senaratne writes, yes, Sri Lanka is not a party to the Rome Statute, which established the International Crime Court, ICC. However, that does not mean that Sri Lankan nationals cannot be brought before the ICC. What is important to note is that there are numerous ways in which nationals of a non-party, such as Sri Lanka, can be brought before the ICC. These methods are clearly set out in Article 13 of the Rome Statute. The Bar Center for Buddhist Studies, located on 90 acres of wooded land in rural central Massachusetts, provides a peaceful and contemplative setting for the study and investigation of Lord Buddha's teachings. The secluded campus consists of a 240-year-old farmhouse, a dharma hall, and 3 cottages, which taken together provide space for a 5,000-volume library, classroom, meditation hall, student housing, dining, and offices. Boston Lanka visited the Buddhist Center to meet its executive director, Dr. Andrew Olensky.
We've been here about 20 years, the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies. It's an outgrowth of the Insight Meditation Society, which is a meditation center next door. The study center evolved perhaps 15 years after the meditation center started, with the understanding that for the tradition to get really well grounded in this country, more than just the meditation was necessary. So here at the study center, we bring an investigation of the tradition more into people's experience.
Dr. Olensky, we know that you have studied at Peradeniya University in Sri Lanka. Could you please tell us about your university experience and also about your impression of Sri Lanka and its people?
I was in Sri Lanka in 1979. I was very entranced by the country. I fell in love, really, with the beauty of the country and with the people. The people were just so friendly and so good-natured and good-hearted. And I'd already begun studying Sanskrit and had an interest in Buddhist studies, so I enrolled at the University of Sri Lanka at Peradeniya as a special student. Lived in a small house, Sanghamita Mawata in Kandy, up near the temple, behind the Temple of the Tooth, and I found it a very enriching experience. I loved it a lot.
That concludes our news edition this week. We meet you next week with another news edition of News, Views and Entertainment from Boston and USA. Till then, goodbye.